Let's talk about Justin Welby against.
Can I just say before we go on to Welby, just one last comment on the Middle East,
Okay.
which is controversial. I accept. But
oh God, what are you going to go on?
it is nonetheless the case, and I would like to hear the Liberals counter this, that every single country in the Middle East, with the exception of Israel, was better off when it was run and owned by countries other than themselves. Every single one. More peaceful, more equal, more free.
Yeah. Worth thinking about that. You're right. We'll leave that one hanging in the air. It's a good point. It's a good point. But I do want to talk about Mr. Welby, as I suppose we'll call him now.
Yeah, of course.
Justin Welby. I mean, against stiff opposition, in my view, probably the worst ever Archbishop of Canterbury in modern times. We'll leave Simon of Sudbury out of this equation because he's the one who in 1381 apparently had his head chopped off and they played football with it. And Welby made a brilliant joke about that during his extraordinary farewell speech to the House of Lords. But very badly timed speech, a tone-deaf speech after a tone-deaf regime as a terrible Archbishop of Canterbury. 3,000 churches closed under his watch, bemused congregations, confused by his wokery, plummeted in numbers, and he leaves the church in a far worse state than he picked it up in, doesn't he? I mean, he was useless.
Yeah, he was useless, and you know, Cameron had his chance. When Rowan Atkinson, I could see Rowan Atkinson leading the Church of England. That would be hilarious.
That would be good.
Rowan Williams.
Yeah.
And Rowan Williams, I disagreed with him on so many things, but this was an intelligent man, a really intelligent bloke. But I think on the wrong side of most of the arguments regarding the Church of England. But Cameron had his choice. He could have gone for Michael Nazir-Ali, who would have been a brilliant Archbishop of Canterbury. He could have gone for John Sentamu, who was the Archbishop of York at the time, and at least seemed to believe in God, which I think is a kind of... It's not the most crucial thing if you're going to be Archbishop of Canterbury.
It's handy, but not necessary.
It's a handy thing. Yeah. Because that was the thing which was missing from Welby's entire tenure. There was no God in the question. Even when it came to that important question about assisted dying, he used the same arguments as those who are not Christians would argue, which is it's going to put a pressure on the elderly who feel that they may need to top themselves in order to make their families more happy, which is a fine utilitarian argument. But the central argument is that life is sacred. But he couldn't quite bring himself to say that, and which is bizarre. And during his tenure, the evangelical churches have risen. The Pentecostalists have risen, and the Church of England, especially the Anglo-Catholic Church of England, has diminished and diminished and diminished. And soon we won't have an established church. Now, some people might say that that's a good thing. I'm kind of torn on it because I think the Church of England in its current form is a subject for hilarity because. Especially at this time of the year, I'm just waiting for the first vicar to say, I've banned O Little Town of Bethlehem because it isn't lying still and peacefully. It's under the jackboot of Israeli fascist oppression, which happens every year without fail.
It will happen. I mean, this is where, this guy, as I say, I'm not much of a believer myself. I am, strictly speaking, a Church of England devotee, christened into that great religion and all that. But I do feel sorry for the die-hard people who still want to go to church, still take it seriously. And they suddenly were foisted with this, as you put it in your column, you know, a sort of David Cameron doppelganger, sort of liberal, spineless, old Etonian, who went about his job with severe wokery. You know, he called for a complete review of all statues and regalia in churches to find out about links to slavery. I'll tell you a story. He went through graveyards as well. I remember reading a story. This sums this guy up. It's not only ridiculous wokery that alienated his traditional congregations, it's nasty. So they came across in this church on the south coast somewhere the grave of a couple. They were a husband and wife team, and they played, they were music hall stars, and they did blackface. You know, they did an Al Jolson thing. This was discovered by the church authorities, and Welby ordered that grave to be dug up. I think that sums him up, don't you? I mean, how heartless, how horrible, how moronic.
Well, moronic is right, and a complete lack of principle, and a complete lack of Christian principle. And that's kind of the thing which I think kind of characterised his tenure as Archbishop of Canterbury. There was just, you know, you could only... the Church of England has tried, and failed, obviously, but tried to keep its members up by accommodating every single instance of liberal overreach. And the problem, of course, is that the Church of England, just like the BBC, the police, the judiciary, our schools, has been taken over.
Oh, really? Can't we get him back? Oh, OK, we're going to try and get Rob back, because I want to get him on that speech. You remember the speech he made last week? It was astonishing. He made a joke about, oh, you know, I had to step up and take responsibility. It wasn't really my fault. Well, yeah, it was actually, Justin. Let's recap on Justin's crime, if you like. The reason he had to resign was because he knew from the 1970s that there was this prolific... Are you back, Rod?
It should be there.
Are you there, Rod?
Yeah.
OK, mate.
I was just saying that the Church of England is no different from the BBC, the police, the judiciary, our schools, in that it's been taken over by an educated liberal elite which has nothing in common with the people who worship it, worship at it, which is why everything else, you know, the Methodists who, and you're going to burn in hell, obviously, for not being a believer, Kev, but the Methodists who you know, I grew up with, have also gone down the woke route, and they've also seen the numbers shrink to virtually nothing. And the last time I was in a Church of England church, you know, I used to walk 2 miles to go to church on a Sunday morning. And this is only a few years ago. I sat there amongst 8 or 9 people, and I was the youngest and thinnest of anybody there. And we had to pass a balloon amongst ourselves to show how dangerous food air miles were to the environment.
Oh, for God's sake, if I can say that.
The balloon almost took out one of the octogenarians who was there. And I just thought, I'm not doing this anymore. This is like being in a nursery school for liberal imbeciles. I'm just not having this, you know.
I completely sympathise. I think they've lost track. They've completely alienated their own congregations, and Welby was awful for that. Let's a couple of words about, you know, to cap off that terrible regime of Justin Welby, that extraordinary farewell speech, which didn't sort of seem to contain any contrition or maybe even an apology for the fact that he knew since the 1970s there was this prolific paedophile basically torturing and abusing young schoolboys. He knew about that for, what was that, 30, 40 years, and did nothing about it. What that speech that he made in the House of Lords required was something called an apology. Instead, he made a hilarious joke about his predecessor being beheaded and the people playing football with his head. He didn't know the result of that football match and had to apologise for his farewell speech afterwards. I mean, how useless can you be?
Well, it comes from having absolutely no sense of self-awareness, nor any sense that the absurd and asinine political ideology which you follow is not shared by the overwhelming majority of people in the country. He is in a bubble the same way as the executives of the BBC are in a bubble and think that there is nothing biased or wrong with what they're doing by putting something on air such as Smoggy Queens, for example.
Wait a minute, Rod. This is just in. We were just wondering what Justin Welby might do next. You just mentioned the BBC. Apparently, he's the new co-host of MasterChef with John Turreau. Do you think it'll work?
I was worried about that. I thought you were going to say he's the new manager of Millwall because we're making very, very bad decisions at the moment. But that would figure very, very well. I think it's
MasterChef. Turreau and Welby. I like it. It's a definite. It's a goer. It's a goer. Rod, fantastic to talk to you.